Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a place where the air itself seems to shimmer, where day and night feel like two different planets, and your body becomes something you're constantly negotiating with. We're going to ancient Egypt, and specifically, into the question of how anyone managed to sleep in that desert heat. You probably won't survive this, at least not without a fan, or, the concept of ice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing all the places these quiet stories travel to. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing just outside a mud brick home, your sandals dusted with fine gold-coloured sand. The sun has just set, thank the gods. But even though the desert looks dark now, the heat hasn't gone anywhere. It clings to your skin like something alive, like a second unwelcome layer. The stones and sand under your feet are still radiating the memory of the day, like they're whispering, "We're not done with you yet." This is the first thing you learn here. Heat is not something that just happens in the daytime. It lingers, it haunts, it waits in every surface, it follows you into the night. You walk slowly because moving too fast feels like trying to breathe inside a pottery kiln. The air is heavy, still, thick. If there is wind, it's more of a warm exhale than a breeze. The desert night doesn't cool off quickly the way movies pretend. Instead, it releases its fire reluctantly like a grudge. And yet, people here slept. They didn't just sleep, they dreamed. They rested deeply. They lived lives whose rhythms were shaped by this exact environment. They didn't fight the heat. They learned how to live inside it. You can hear the faint lapping of the Nile somewhere to your left. That slow, steady pulse that is the whole reason any of this civilization exists. The river is cooler than the air, always holding a softness that the sand does not. It is one of the few places where, at night, the world feels briefly merciful. You imagine walking toward it, dipping your feet in, letting that coolness travel up your spine. But you stay where you are, because tonight, you're learning to sleep like an ancient Egyptian, and that means you learn to sleep where the heat lives. Here's your first historical fact. Temperatures in ancient Egypt could swing dramatically between day and night, but in the thick of summer, even nighttime might only drop to around 86 degrees, 30 degrees. That's the cool part of the day. And without electric fans, without air conditioning, without refrigerators, without anything but what nature offered and human ingenuity could modify, you needed to learn how to trick heat itself. There's a fringe little detail you'll appreciate. Some Egyptians believed that heat wasn't just a physical condition, it was also spiritual. Too much heat meant imbalance, agitation, vulnerability to certain spirits of illness. So, sleeping well in the heat wasn't merely about comfort. It was about protection, keeping your body and your soul in the right shape overnight. Historians still argue whether this belief influenced the design of homes, or if the architecture came first and the meaning came second, layered like interpretation over necessity. But either way, it shaped how Egyptians understood the body resting in darkness. You walk farther, and your feet kick up faint clouds of dust so fine it seems like smoke. The houses around you are low, flat-roofed, geometric. They look simple from the outside, but everything about them is intentional. The thick mud brick walls don't just stand, they buffer. They absorb heat slowly, and they release heat slowly, trying to smooth the difference between midday burn and midnight relief. The walls are painted in pale colours to reflect sunlight. The windows, when they exist at all, are small, placed high, meant to invite air but not heat. No one is asleep yet. No one ever sleeps right after sunset. It's too early, too hot. Sleep doesn't begin when the sky goes dark. Sleep begins when the breeze begins, if it begins. You notice how people gather outside as the night deepens, not because they're socialising, though that happens too, but because the air moves better when you aren't inside four walls holding the day's warmth hostage. Some families sit in small courtyards, drinking water from cool earthen jugs. Others simply wait. Waiting is part of Egyptian sleep. You wait for the air to shift. The desert is quiet in a way that feels enormous but not empty. You hear crickets. You hear the faint calls of night birds. You hear the distant bray of a donkey that has opinions about life. You hear footsteps on sand that sound like whispers. The world is alive, but in slow motion. You wipe your forehead. The sweat doesn't feel like an annoyance. It feels like the only cooling mechanism your body has left. There is no shame in sweating here. Everyone is sweating. Even the gods probably sweat. Someone nearby sprinkles water across the ground, just a thin layer. It hits the hot earth and releases a tiny bloom of coolness as it evaporates. A breath. A miracle. A reminder that sometimes comfort here comes in seconds, not minutes. The night stretches. The stars come out. Not the handful you might see through a modern city sky, but thousands, no, tens of thousands, like someone spilled crushed quartz dust across a black cloth dome. You understand why Egyptians thought the sky itself was a goddess? Finally, you feel it. The breeze. Small, hesitant, like a guest who isn't sure they're welcome. But it moves. It moves. It grazes the back of your neck, lifts the hair at your temples, slides under your clothing. It is the signal. Sleep time isn't decided by clocks, it's decided by the wind. You inhale deeply, you exhale slowly, and your body says yes. Tomorrow the heat will return. It always does. But tonight you are learning how to rest inside it. Not by resisting it, but by learning how to move with it. You step inside the home now, letting your eyes adjust to the soft dimness. The air is warmer in here, at least at first, because the thick walls have been holding every hour of sunlight like memory. But remember how we talked about heat lingering? These walls are doing something deliberate. They're not just walls, they're breath-slowing buffers. You begin to understand how survival here wasn't about fighting the sun, it was about learning to negotiate with it. The house is made of mud brick, a blend of Nile silt, sand and straw pressed into blocks and sun-dried, not fired. It's the most ordinary material in the world here. The same stuff the river leaves behind every flood season, the same stuff you get under your fingernails without noticing. And yet, this simple thing is genius. Mud brick absorbs heat slowly and releases it slowly. During scorching afternoons, the inside of the home stays cooler than outside. During the evening, when the outer world cools first, the inside stays warmer just a bit longer. These houses smooth the edges of temperature the way linen softens the touch of air on your skin. You run your hand along the wall. It's rough, textured, cool in places where the sun hasn't reached directly. You can feel the intention. This is architecture created by people who watched sandstorms, who tracked shadows like water, who knew that the desert is always negotiating its terms. There are openings high on the walls, small windows placed not for the view but for airflow. They're narrow, more slits than squares, shaped to let in night breezes but not the molten breath of afternoon light. Some have lattice screens made from palm ribs, simple cross-woven patterns that slow the wind and scatter the sun. These are not decorative, they are survival art. A historical fact here: ancient Egyptian homes were typically built around a small central courtyard. Even the humblest house often had some version of one, an open-air pocket where heat could rise and escape rather than accumulating indoors. Courtyards let the sky be part of the architecture. They are breathing lungs in the middle of brick and dust. You step into such a courtyard now. It's just a square of earth open to the sky, but it feels like a small world. A clay jar sits in one corner, its surface beaded with moisture. This is a zur, a porous water jar, intentionally made so that water slowly seeps through the vessel and evaporates from its surface, cooling the water inside. The Egyptians didn't have refrigerators, but they had physics, intuition, and patience. Someone figured out that if you make a jar that sweats, the water inside stays cooler than the air around it. It feels like magic. It's just science. A fringe detail. Some households placed wet reeds or damp cloth over their windows in summer, letting breezes pull coolness from them, like a 3,000-year-old version of a swamp cooler. Ingenious, messy, effective, and yes, you'd probably try this today if the AC ever goes out. No judgment. You move toward the inner sleeping area, noticing how ceilings here are low. That's intentional too, because low ceilings trap less heat. Higher ceilings are for temples and palaces and ego. Sleeping rooms are quiet, practical, timed to human breath. The roof beams above you are made of palm trunks stacked with mats of reeds and clay plastered over them. Lightweight, organic, made to insulate. There's a debate among historians, still ongoing, about how standardized these layouts were. Some argue most homes followed a nearly universal pattern because climate demanded it. Others believe variation was huge, shaped by wealth, region, trade, and family structure. Maybe every street in Memphis looked different. Maybe they didn't. But what everyone agrees on is this: airflow was a design priority, not a luxury. You step toward the doorway leading to the roof. The ladder is simple, just notched wood or mud brick steps built into the wall itself. Climbing rooftops is so normal here that the architecture expects it. Roofs are not just roofs. They are sleeping platforms, working surfaces, cool night gathering places. But we're not going up there yet. For now, stay inside. Learn how this space handles heat. Someone has hung lengths of linen in the doorway, not to block entry, but to break the movement of air into something gentle. Linen is everywhere in Egypt. It's like the country's heartbeat. Light, breathable, the opposite of wool or fur. You brush your fingers against it and feel how the fabric lifts when the breeze comes through the high window. It almost sighs. You sit down on the low-plastered bench running along the wall. Many Egyptian homes had built-in seating like this, because movable furniture traps heat, and crowding a sleeping room makes air thick. Less furniture meant more airflow. More airflow meant more sleep. Practical minimalism before minimalism was aesthetic. Outside, a donkey brays again. Louder now, like he's personally offended by something mundane. Maybe the moon. Maybe another donkey. Maybe just life. Donkeys always have thoughts. Someone nearby fans themselves lazily with a woven palm fan. Not to cool themselves so much as to stir the air. Encouraging movement, not temperature change. Egyptians understood that sometimes the key to cooling is in motion, not coldness. A still night is the enemy. A moving night is mercy. You lean back and picture living here not just for a night, but always. Waking in this space, cooking in the courtyard, sweeping sand that blows in like a neighbour that doesn't knock. Repairing roof plaster after rain. Rare, but memorable. Listening to the house breathe as temperatures shift through the day. The home is simple, yes, but it's not crude, it's tuned. It's tuned to heat, wind, light, shadow, sky, water. Body, it's a structure built from conversations with the environment. You think of modern houses, insulated boxes trying to block nature out. But here, the house is a filter, not a barrier. A mediator, a quiet negotiator offering you the best possible version of sleep in a landscape that never gives comfort for free. You take another breath, slower this time. You imagine lying down inside this room as the night progresses, heat gradually releasing from the walls, breeze moving through high windows, coolness settling like a permission slip for dreaming. And you realize humans didn't just survive the desert. They learned how to rest in it. You climb now, slowly, toward the roof. The ladder is steady beneath your hands, though the wood is worn smooth from endless use. Egyptians climbed to their roofs the way you might walk to your couch, without thinking, without ceremony. Up here is where the night becomes livable. When you reach the top, the air shifts. It's still warm, yes, still carrying the memory of the day, but it moves. Not dramatically, not like a gust, just enough. Like the desert breathing out after holding its breath all afternoon. You close your eyes and let that faint current skim across your cheeks. The difference is subtle, but to a body overheated and tired, it feels like the first sip of water after walking all day. The rooftop is flat and open, edged just enough to keep you from rolling off in your sleep. It's not meant to be decorative or symbolic or impressive, it's meant to be used. Here, this is bedroom, living room, stargazing platform, gossip balcony, and sometimes storage. Life in Egypt happens on multiple levels, and the roof is the quiet one, the level where the day ends. A historical fact. We know from ancient texts, tomb paintings, and domestic archaeology that rooftop sleeping was common. Not just for comfort, but because it allowed families to escape the trapped heat of the rooms below. In some seasons, entire households would move their bedding up here every night, returning below only during the rare chill or sudden windstorm. You take a few steps. The clay beneath your feet is still warm, noticeably so, but not unbearably. The heat leaks away slowly like it's reluctant to release what it collected. You see the impression of woven mats laid out earlier to dry. Someone has rolled them to one side now, waiting for the exact moment when sleep becomes possible. It's still early. Stars have only just begun to appear. But sleep here is not tied to the clock, you remember this. It is tied to the air. Egyptians did not go to bed just because the sun went down. They waited for the world to exhale. You hear voices from the roof next door. Laughter, soft conversation, the kind that unfolds slowly because no one is in a rush. Neighbours here live close, roofs touching, sounds drifting between families as easily as sand moves on the wind. Privacy is not a rigid box, it's a flexible idea. And at night the city becomes a single, loosely knit community of breathing, resting, waiting humans. A fringe detail you might enjoy. On exceptionally hot nights, some families slept with their bedding slightly dampened. Just enough to cool the skin as the desert air dried it. Not soaked, not dripping, just misted with Nile water from a palm fibre bowl. It was a trick passed through generations, the same way someone today might say, sleep with the window open, or set your fan to rotate. Small advice keeps cultures alive. You walk toward the low wall and look over the side. Below, the streets are thinning of movement. A stray cat stalks something invisible. A merchant closes the wooden shutters of his shop. A woman carries water in the crook of her arm, her footsteps unhurried. No one here rushes once the heat breaks. The night is not a thing to conquer, it is a thing to lean into. There's a debate among historians, still unresolved, on whether Egyptians thought of sleeping outdoors as merely practical, or if they considered it spiritually beneficial. Some evidence suggests that sleeping under the open sky brought one closer to specific gods. The goddess Nut, the sky itself, was believed to stretch over the world like a protective mother. Did Egyptians sleep beneath her to be closer? Or did that meaning come later, layered like linen? We may never know. You sit now. The edge of the roof is coarse against your legs, but familiar. Someone nearby has placed a small ceramic oil lamp, its flame tiny and soft, more ember than fire. It doesn't offer light so much as presence. A signal. We're still awake, but gently so. You imagine lying down here. First, the mat. Woven palm fibres, wide and scratchy but surprisingly breathable. Its purpose is not plushness. It is to lift your body slightly from the roof surface, allowing air to circulate beneath. Egyptian mats are not trying to cradle you, they are trying to keep you alive. Comfort is a happy accident. Over the mat, a thin linen sheet. Not thick, not heavy, just enough. Linen here is woven so fine that some pieces look nearly translucent in strong light. It's not just cloth, it's technology. It lets sweat evaporate. It lets your skin breathe. It does not cling. It exists only to help your body return to itself after a day of being pressed by the sun. You lie back just to feel it. Your shoulder blades settle. The night breeze brushes your collarbone. The sky, wide and enormous and unreachable, rests above you. You hear the river again, faint, like someone humming a song from far away. Someone in another household drifts into a lullaby. The tune rises, falls, rises, falls, like oars moving through water. It's meant to soothe children, but it soothes everyone who hears it. You glance upward. The stars have multiplied. They are so many now that it's hard to find darkness between them. They don't blink like they do through modern haze. They burn steady, clear. You can see the path of the gods, the invisible highways of story and myth. You can imagine priests, astronomers, farmers and children all looking at this same sky and finding their gods waiting. Sleep here does not come with silence, it comes with softness. Soft air, soft voices, soft stars, soft linen. You think oddly that this is rest, not despite the desert, but because of it. The heat demands surrender. The night demands patience. And rest comes not as escape, but as alignment. Your body loosens. Your jaw unclenches. Your breathing deepens. If you were Egyptian, this is the moment when dreams begin to form, not as personal stories, but as messages, guidance, symbols. Sleep is not just sleep here. It is a doorway. And the night sky is the frame. You close your eyes, not to block the world out, but to join it more quietly. This roof is your shelter. This sky is your canopy. This breeze is your lullaby. And night finally lets you rest. You stay on the roof as the night deepens, but now your attention shifts downward, to the thing your body will actually rest on. Because in a climate like this, the object between you and the heat is everything. A bed here is not a plush retreat. It is a tool, nearly an instrument tuned to the desert's rhythm. If the design is wrong, you don't sleep. And if you don't sleep, the heat wins. Your bedding is simple. A mat woven from palm fibres, a wooden frame if you're lucky, and linen. Always linen. Linen is practically a religion in this place, and you're about to understand why. You kneel beside the bedding area on the roof. The mat looks plain, just a grid of dry braided fibres, crossed tightly, the rough texture visible even in the moonlight. It's made from date palm leaves or doom palm, split, softened, and twisted into ropes. The weave is loose enough to allow air to slip through, but tight enough to support weight. If you hold your hand beneath it, you can feel the faint draft that moves along the surface of the roof. That airflow is the entire point, a historical fact. The Egyptians are credited with inventing one of the earliest known bed frames designed specifically for airflow. Some simple beds were just raised wooden platforms slung with woven rope or reeds, lifting the body off the ground so heat trapped in walls and floors couldn't engulf the sleeper. Sleeping elevated wasn't luxury, it was survival engineering. You run your palm across the mat. It feels scratchy at first. Not painful, just honest. This is not bedding promising softness. This is bedding promising breath. It keeps your skin from being plastered against a hot surface. It lets sweat evaporate. It does something modern memory foam would cry about. If you were a labourer or a farmer, this mat might be your entire sleeping setup. Rolled up during the day, laid out at night, catching the faint breeze like a net catches fish. Practical, portable, reliable. But you do notice something else. Someone has placed a thin linen sheet folded neatly on one side. This is where comfort enters the picture, not in cushioning, but in texture. Egyptian linen is cool to the touch, especially at night. It doesn't cling, it doesn't trap heat. And because it's woven from the flax plant, which grows along the Nile's rich silt banks, the linen fibres are long, smooth, and capable of being spun incredibly fine. Some linen in wealthy households was almost sheer, practically glowing when held to the light. But even everyday linen was a gift to skin overheating after 10 hours of sun. You lift the sheet. The fabric whispers as it moves, and yes, that is the word for it. It doesn't rustle, it whispers. It is the sound of something clean, simple, and ancient. You lay it across the mat, smoothing it into place. Part of the Egyptian sleep ritual involved preparing the bed deliberately, not just tossing things down and collapsing. There is dignity here, even in fatigue. The rhythm of preparing sleep is part of the unwinding. There is a fringe tidbit you'll appreciate. Some Egyptian stuffed small pillows with kapok or reed down, plant fluff gathered from seed pods. They believed these light, airy pillows helped the head stay cool. And sometimes, yes, they even scented their bedding with crushed lotus petals or sweet flag root. Because even in the desert, comfort can bloom. You lie down fully now. The mat supports you without smothering. The linen breathes with you. The night air travels beneath you, not above. Your body registers the difference instantly. It is not cool exactly, but it is bearable, and in the desert, bearable is peace. Across the roofline you spot another kind of bed, one with a wooden frame raised on legs. The legs curve slightly like animal limbs. This is the classic Egyptian bed shape scholars recognise, a slight slope downward from head to foot, designed to encourage circulation and keep swelling down after hot days of standing work. The curve isn't decorative, it's physiological, and the wooden surface of the bed is strung with rope or reeds, woven taut in the same pattern as your mat. The linen is laid on top. Elevation lifts the sleeper into slightly cooler air and away from scorpions or snakes that might wander the ground at night. Historians still argue whether everyone used raised beds, or if they were reserved mostly for elites and artisans in prosperous communities. The archaeological record shows both, mats alone and mats on frames. Maybe families rotated bed use based on season. Maybe preference mattered more than wealth in some regions. The truth is scattered, like sand patterns that shift after every wind. You turn your head slightly. The stars are a blanket. The night breeze is a slow-moving tide. The heat is loosening its grip inch by inch. Someone nearby shifts on their own mat, the fibres creaking softly. Another person hums under their breath, maybe half dreaming already. The city is falling asleep not in silence, but in shared exhale. And that's something else to notice. Sleep here is communal, not in the emotional sense, but in the practical environmental one. Everyone waits for the breeze. Everyone lays mats out when the walls release their heat. Everyone shifts, lifts, breathes, exhales together. Rest is a collective rhythm. You look once more at your mat and realise it carries more wisdom than softness. A bed is not a cushion. A bed is a conversation with the air, palm fibres, rope sling, linen sheet, desert wind. It's all a system, each piece relying on the others. You inhale through your nose. The air smells faintly of clay and river minerals. You exhale. Your body begins to settle into stillness. Comfort here is not found by sinking. It is found by floating. Floating on mat. Floating under stars. Floating inside breeze. Sleep comes gently. Not as escape, but as surrender. Now shift your gaze across the rooftops, past the woven mats and reed slings, to a place where the breeze touches something far grander, where the bed is no longer just a tool for survival, but a declaration of identity. Because not everyone slept on palm mats. Not everyone had the same relationship with heat. Some Egyptians, wealthy officials, high priests, nobles, members of the court, slept on beds that were as much statements as they were sleeping surfaces. You walk toward a different household now, larger, more expansive, with cleaner lines and smoother plaster. The rooftop here is shaded by a linen canopy stretched between poles, catching the breeze like a sail, and in the centre of that shade stands a bed. Not a mat, not a rope sling, a bed, elevated, structured, crafted. Your eyes meet a frame of imported ebony wood, so dark it absorbs starlight, polished until it gleams. Ebony doesn't grow in Egypt. It had to be traded for, travelled for, negotiated for. To sleep on ebony is to sleep on proof of one's influence. The legs of the bed curve gracefully, shaped like the limbs of a bull. Strong, powerful, steady, a symbol of fertility and endurance. The frame is quite literally animal-shaped, as if the sleeper becomes supported by living strength. And then there is gold. Not everywhere, not overwhelming, just enough to signal this is not ordinary life. The gold caps the legs, the gold edges the frame, the gold catches the moonlight and reflects it back in lines sharp as memory. If the mat you lay on earlier was about humility and practicality, this bed is about permanence and presence, a historical fact. Tutankhamun's tomb contained several beds, some simple, some highly ornate. One was even covered in gold leaf with feline-shaped legs, the curve of the bed designed to cradle the body the way a lioness cradles her cubs. These beds were not only for sleeping, they were symbols of divine alignment, power and eternal restoration. You step closer. The bed's sleeping surface is not a solid board, nor feathers, nor something plush. It's still a woven base, reeds or cords, drawn taut. Airflow still matters. Even the wealthy cannot escape the desert. Luxury does not override physics. Wealth only adds artistry. On top of the woven surface rests linen, layers of it, soft, smooth, and folded with care. The linen smells faintly of blue lotus and sweet marjoram, perfumed. Not because of vanity, well, maybe partly, but because fragrance here is calming, cooling, grounding. Scent matters in the dark, it shapes dreams. And yes, the linen here is finer, woven so thin it almost resembles mist. You can imagine it being cool even under the hottest breath of summer. But this bed is not merely furniture. This bed is symbol. For the Egyptians, the act of lying down was deeply tied to the cycle of death and rebirth. When the sun set, the god Ra travelled through the underworld. When you slept, your spirit wandered too. Bed frames often echoed the shape of ceremonial beer platforms, the same kind used in funerary rites, because sleep and the afterlife were mirrors of each other. To lie in a bed was to rehearse eternity. You place a hand on the ebony frame. The wood is smooth and cool in places, still radiating warmth in others. There's a fringe detail here that might surprise you. Elite families often placed headrests instead of pillows, curved wooden supports that lifted the head above the bedding, keeping hair oils and sweat from overheating the neck. These headrests look uncomfortable to modern eyes, almost like something a chiropractor would glare at. But to Egyptians, they were practical and symbolic. The head was spiritually significant. Lifting it during sleep was thought to protect it. You imagine resting your neck on one now. Strange at first, yes, but imagine how cooling it would feel. Air can move beneath your hair. Sweat evaporates. A debate among historians continues. Were these ornate beds actually slept on every night? Or were some reserved for ceremony and display? Some scholars insist that daily sleeping surfaces were simpler, even for elites, and that the golden beds were more for status and ritual. Others argue the opposite, that in a world where the environment dictated rest, comfort and airflow, mattered enough to justify daily use of such beds. The truth likely varied from household to household, and perhaps from season to season. You lean back slightly. The linen canopy above you flutters. The breeze is stronger here than at the more modest home, not because the air knows wealth, but because the house is taller. Status has literal elevation. The higher you are above the packed streets, the more the air moves. Coolness becomes privilege. Below you, you can still hear the soft sounds of the night, the hum of insects, distant splashes from the Nile, someone calling softly to a child too awake for this hour. The city breathes the same air, but experiences it differently. Yet here is the strange truth. Even with gold, even with ebony, even with perfume and elevated platforms and canopies, sleep must still wait for the breeze. The desert does not negotiate with wealth. Heat does not bow to status. Everyone, from the humblest labourer to the high priest in Thebes, must sleep according to the rhythm of air. This creates an unexpected equality. In the darkest, quietest hour of the night, when the breeze finally arrives, it arrives for everyone. You lie back on the mattress, if we can call it that, and feel the give of the woven support beneath your shoulders. The air flows across your neck, cool, slow, patient. The stars overhead reflect gently in the gold accents of the bed frame. You could almost believe the night sky itself has lowered to rest beside you. Golden fibre, ebony and wind, wealth and heat, body and sky. Here luxury does not protect you from nature. Luxury learns to listen to nature. The desert gives only one kind of comfort. The comfort you earn by learning how to move with it. And whether you sleep on a mat or a bed of gold, your body still waits for wind, starlight and silence. Because here, sleep is not purchased. It is received. You reach down and pinch the corner of the linen sheet between your fingers, lifting it once again. It feels almost impossibly light, like water made into fabric, like air that has learned to take shape. If you've ever worn a cotton t-shirt on a hot day, or wrapped yourself in a towel straight out of the dryer, forget those sensations. Linen, Egyptian linen, is something else entirely. It is temperature, texture, breath, and quiet all at once. The Egyptians didn't just use linen, they perfected it. They built an entire textile identity around it. They farmed flax along the fertile floodplains of the Nile, where silt settles every season like a blessing. They harvested the stalks, retted them in water, beat and combed them into long pale fibres, smooth, strong, astonishing in their softness. And then they spun those fibres into threads so fine that some pieces of linen found in tombs have a thread count that rivals modern fabrics made with advanced machinery. This isn't exaggeration. This is the kind of precision that comes from thousands of years of doing one thing with deep intention. Historical fact. The Egyptians considered linen so essential that it functioned not only as clothing and bedding, but also as currency and tax payment. Workers could be paid in linen, debts could be settled in linen. Wealth was measured not just in land and grain, but in how many lengths of linen a household possessed. Now imagine, you're lying beneath the open sky. The breeze has settled into a slow, steady movement, brushing across your bare arms. The linen sheet drapes lightly across you, not pressing, not trapping. The fabric is cool when you first touch it, and as it warms to your skin, it doesn't cling. It simply stays where it belongs, floating just enough to let your body breathe. You exhale. The sheet lifts with the breath, rises, falls, like a tide that only you can feel. If mats and woven bed frames are the foundation of Egyptian sleep, linen is the soul of it. It is not just fabric, it is relief. The process of making linen was laborious. Every step was tactile, physical, almost meditative. Farmers worked alongside riverbanks. Spinners sat in doorways for better light. Weavers moved rhythmically at looms that creaked like old boats. Entire families took part in producing what would eventually become the cloth that touches your skin at night. So when you lie down here, wrapped in linen, you're not just touching fabric. You're touching time. You're touching hands. You're touching the river that made all of this possible. But linen had another role, one tied to symbolism. A fringe detail. Linen was associated with purity. Priests wore only linen during temple rituals. Mummies were wrapped in hundreds of layers of it, carefully folded, deliberately arranged, as if the body being protected from the heat of death itself. To sleep in linen was to wrap your life in the same material that would one day wrap your eternity. Comfort, ritual, and mortality braided into one thread. You turn your head slightly. The moonlight catches in the folds of the sheet, and you notice something. Linen reflects light differently. It has a soft, matte glow, like moonlight reflected off the Nile. Egyptians would say linen has memory. It remembers the river, and perhaps you feel that memory now. But linen was not always perfect. There was hierarchy in the weave. Coarse linen for workers, fine linen for officials. Linen woven so thin it appeared nearly invisible for the wealthy, the royal, the divine. The smoothness of your bedding could signal your social standing as clearly as the house you lived in. Historians still argue whether everyday Egyptians reserved their finest linen only for special rites, festivals, ceremonies, burials, or if some families used high-quality linen as daily bedding during certain seasons. Some evidence suggests people treasured their best cloth, saving it for moments of spiritual or emotional significance. But fabric wore out fast in the desert. Sun, sweat, sand, life. So the line between special and used blurred over generations. You gather the sheet loosely around your legs and notice how the weave allows air to pass through. It's breathable in a way that feels intentional, almost generous. Linen doesn't trap heat. It releases it, slowly, patiently, like someone standing in a doorway, holding the curtain aside to let a breeze pass. You think of modern fabrics, synthetics that trap humidity, heavy cotton that absorbs sweat but dries slowly. Linen behaves differently. It doesn't try to dominate your body. It collaborates with it. That small cooperation becomes everything here. Because sleep in Egypt is not about escaping the environment. It is about respecting it, understanding it, learning the way heat rises and falls like a tide. Linen is simply one more way of living with the desert instead of against it. Someone nearby adjusts their bedding in the dim starlight. The fabric moves softly, no rustle, no friction, just whispering. The scent of blue lotus lingers faintly. Blue lotus wasn't just a perfume. It was a mild sedative, a relaxation aid. Mixed into oils, soaked into linens, burned in lamps, it brought the mind into quieter waters. So you're not just lying on linen, you are lying in fragrance, in memory, in tranquility. You begin to feel yourself soften, your shoulders loosen, your spine sinks closer to the mat. Sleep begins to settle in your limbs, not heavy, but warm and slow, like honey being poured. Your breath deepens. You notice how your body no longer feels like something you're holding up. It feels like something being held. You exhale through your nose. The linen lifts slightly. You inhale. The linen settles back. The breeze brushes your hairline. The stars glow above. The desert waits, patient and immense. Here, in the open air, under a sheet spun from river plants and sunlight, you begin to understand why the Egyptians didn't fear sleep. Sleep was renewal. Sleep was return. Sleep was practice for eternity. You are not escaping the day. You are rejoining the night. You stay on the rooftop a little longer, feeling the night settle, but now your attention shifts towards something subtle and clever. How the Egyptians cooled themselves not only through architecture and bedding, but through water, shade, and the quiet science of evaporation, the kind that turns a single drop of water into relief. You walk toward the courtyard again, descending the ladder slowly, your skin still carrying the warmth of the roof tiles, your linen sheet trailing over your shoulder like a soft ribbon of moonlight. The house feels different now, cooler than before, because time has passed, because heat has loosened its grip, because the desert always exhales eventually. In the courtyard sits a wide clay water jar, its surface slightly damp, almost sweating. This is not an accident. The jar is made from porous clay so that water seeps toward the outside, evaporating into the dry air and pulling heat away as it vanishes. It's one of the oldest refrigeration tricks in the world, and it works without gears, without wires, without anything except patience and desert wind. Historical fact. These jars, called zir or kasar, were used in nearly every Egyptian household for thousands of years, their shape and clay composition barely changing across dynasties because the design was already perfect. You dip your fingers into the water stored inside and feel something almost shocking. Coolness. Not cold, not icy, but definitely cooler than the air around you, as if water remembers the river even when it leaves it. That coolness feels like forgiveness. A fringe detail whispers into your ear. Sometimes, to intensify the cooling effect, Egyptians wrapped the jars with damp cloths made from palm fibers. As the cloth dried, it magnified the evaporation, creating an even stronger cooling field around the jar, almost like the world's first fan coil unit, except silent, elegant, and shaped like the land. You carry a small clay cup of that cool water to the shaded side of the courtyard. The shade itself is a sacred art here. Egyptians knew the difference between shade made by walls and shade made by woven reed screens. One traps heat, one breathes. The courtyard walls cast hard shadows that shift slowly across the ground like the hands of an invisible sundial. You step into one of those shadows and feel your pulse slow. The sun may be gone, but its echo is everywhere, so shade remains a necessary companion to rest. There is a woven reed screen overhead, stretched across wooden beams, filtering moonlight into thin silver stripes. It's not blocking the sky, it's softening it. It's creating a room without walls, a ceiling without weight. You sit beneath it and feel how the air moves differently here. Slower, yes, but more focused, gathered, directed. Egyptians understood airflow like some people understand music. They could feel its notes. They could tune its pathways. This courtyard is an instrument, played nightly by the wind. Historians still argue whether these cooling strategies developed through conscious scientific experimentation or through accumulated generational instinct. Did someone one day notice that wet cloth cools when the wind touches it? Or did the knowledge seep in slowly, unconsciously, the way a river shapes stone? The debate continues, but the result is the same. The Egyptians lived inside a quiet kind of engineering brilliance. You lift the clay cup to your lips and sip. The water tastes faintly of minerals, of earth, of the river's ancient memory. It tastes like night. Your body doesn't have to fight anymore. Your muscles, tired from walking and waiting for the chill to begin, are finally allowed to soften. Nearby, someone spreads water across the stone floor with the flat of their palm. Just a thin layer. You watch as the water darkens the stone, then begins to shimmer in the moonlight. Seconds later, it is gone. Not absorbed, but lifted by air, transformed into coolness you can actually feel on your skin. You close your eyes and let that evaporative breeze settle across your face. This is cooling by subtraction, not adding cold, removing heat. A small miracle repeated nightly. You begin to realize that everything here is rhythmic. Sleep is not an event, it is a movement. The breeze comes, but you must be ready to receive it. The mats are placed in the exact paths where air flows. The water jars are positioned where evaporation will spread. The shade is angled not just for sun, but for moon. The courtyard becomes a breathing lung, just like the house, just like you. And then there are the night baths. Not full immersions, water is precious always, but gentle rinses wiping down the arms, chest, neck and face, with water cooled in those sweating jars. The Egyptians often scented this water with lotus or myrrh, not to mask the day's sweat, but to signal to the body that it is time to rest. Cooling is not just physical here, it is psychological, it is ritual. You dip your hands again and wipe your face. The scent rises softly, almost floral, almost herbal, almost river-like. Your breath deepens, your mind settles. You're not refreshing yourself, you're returning to yourself. The desert no longer feels like something pressing against you, it feels like something holding you. The night, once harsh and hot and heavy, is now a companion, a quiet guardian. Water, shade, air, heat. You're learning to live with all of them at once. The breeze returns, and this time, it stays. The stars shift overhead, slow and ancient. It is finally time to sleep again. You stay in the courtyard, but now your awareness sharpens toward the quieter preparations happening around you, those small rhythmic gestures before sleep that are as much ritual as they are routine. The ways Egyptians cared for their skin, their scent, their body, and their breath after a day lived under a punishing sun. A woman sits near a low ceramic lamp, the flame barely flickering, just a dim ember held inside clay. In her lap is a small jar of oil, sesame, moringa, or castor, depending on the season and what the household can afford. She dips her fingers into it and begins to smooth the oil along her arms, slow and unhurried, the same motion you might use to soothe a tired animal. The oil catches the lamplight and glows faintly, turning her skin into something warm and alive, no longer dry and tight from heat. A historical fact: ancient Egyptians moisturized daily, not as vanity but necessity. The desert stripped skin relentlessly, and oils preserved it, softened it, healed it. Even workers who laboured in fields used oils when they could, sometimes mixed with herbs or ground minerals to protect the skin like a shield. And yet, there is beauty in the gesture too. To touch one's own skin slowly after a long day is to tell the body, you have survived today. You may rest now. Someone hands you a small alabaster jar. It is smooth and cool, carved with a shape like a tear, as if it remembers all the water the Nile once carried. You open it carefully. The scent rises like memory. Blue lotus, yes, but also honey and something green and aquatic. Egyptians believed scents had power, not only emotional but spiritual. Fragrance could calm the mind, settle the heart, guide dreams. Some believed certain perfumes helped the spirit self, find its way through the night. A fringe detail, Egyptians sometimes used crocodile fat as a base for certain salves and unguents. Yes, crocodile fat. The same creature that slid through the Nile waters with jaws like gates. To wear it was to take some part of the river's power onto your own body. Strange, practical, mythic, all at once. You dip your fingers into the jar and press the oil onto your neck, your collarbone, the hollow just beneath your ear. The scent warms as it meets your skin, rising slowly like incense smoke. The night feels different now, not just cooler but softer. Your breathing slows without effort. Your shoulders drop. The air moves across your oiled skin more easily, making the cooling sensation stronger than before. This is not just sleep preparation, it is self-return. Across the courtyard, someone brushes their hair, long and dark and heavy. The comb is carved from wood or bone, worn smooth from years of use. Egyptians took great care in grooming before sleep, not from vanity but because cleanliness was tied directly to spiritual clarity. To sleep dirty was to invite troubled dreams. To sleep clean was to invite messages, healing, restoration. Historians still argue whether these nighttime grooming rituals were consciously spiritual or simply cultural habits that gained meaning over time. Did Egyptians truly expect dreams to speak to them? Or did dreams simply become a convenient space to store fears and hopes when the world was silent? The debate continues, but your hands keep moving. You rub a small amount of oil across your chest, your wrists, your temples. The scent is warm now, familiar, settling. Cooling the skin is not only about lowering temperature, it is about telling the nervous system that the day is over. You take a cup of water and pour a small amount over your feet. The sensation is immediate, relief that travels up your legs like an exhale. The dust of the day dissolves into the earth. Your body remembers something ancient, the feeling of being cared for. Egyptian night routines are not about rushing. There is no frantic brushing of teeth while checking messages, no collapsing into bed half distracted. Here, the night routine is slow and continuous, like the Nile's own flow. You wipe your face with a piece of linen dipped in the cool jar water. The linen smells faintly of sunlight, of fields drying after harvest. It touches your skin with the softness of breath. You exhale. The courtyard's shadows deepen, but they feel safe, like the darkness under a tree canopy, not the kind that swallows. A child whimpers lightly somewhere nearby, and a voice, gentle, patient, begins humming a lullaby in a language older than any written word. The melody rises and falls in long waves, slow enough for the body to follow. You recognize the pattern instantly. This is how humans all over the world coax the nervous system into stillness. A voice rocking the air, breath rocking the body, heart rocking the mind. You lie back on your linen-covered mat again. The oil on your skin glows faintly, the scent of lotus and moringa lifting into the breeze. The evaporation of the water jar continues, sending threads of coolness across your arms and neck. The courtyard is a small universe of sound and shadow. The soft rustle of linen shifting, the hum of night insects, the distant echo of voices fading into quiet. You do not feel separated from your body anymore. The heat is no longer something to endure. It has softened into warmth, the kind that belongs to life. You realize something simple but profound. Egyptians didn't battle their environment. They collaborated with it. Water to cool, oil to soothe, shade to protect, linen to breathe, breath to slow, ritual to remember the self. And now your eyelids grow heavy, not forced, not pushed, just naturally drawn toward rest by the slow descent of the night. You sink into the mat. The linen rises and falls with your breathing again. Your body is ready. The desert night accepts you, and sleep, once distant, now settles at your side like an old friend. You are lying on your mat now, the scent of lotus still faint on your skin, the night breeze finally steady. And this is when another layer of Egyptian sleep reveals itself. Not the physical comfort, not the cooling tricks, but the invisible shield people placed around themselves before drifting into dreams. Because to the ancient Egyptians, sleep was not just rest, it was travel. When you slept, part of you left the body and wandered through spaces where gods, ancestors, and hidden forces moved. Dreams were not random, dreams were messages. Dreams were arenas where your spirit met things that the waking world could not hold. So protection mattered, not just for your house, not just for your body, but for your soul. You reach for a small object placed near your bedding, an amulet carved from stone or faience, shaped into something familiar yet powerful. Perhaps the Eye of Horus, perhaps the scarab, perhaps the tiny childlike figure of Bees, the dwarf god of joy and fierce protection. You turn the amulet in your fingers. The surface is smooth from years of handling. The edges are warm from being held through countless nights. Egyptians believed that these amulets were not merely symbols, they were active guardians. Historical fact: the Eye of Horus, also called the Vejet, was believed to protect the sleeper from harm, to restore the body, and to guard against nightmares sent by malevolent spirits or unsettled ancestors. It was not just jewellery, it was a night watch. You place the amulet near your chest as you settle, or perhaps you tie it around your neck with a thin cord of hemp or linen. Either way, it rests near your heart, the place where identity, memory and spirit converge. Someone nearby whispers a quiet invocation before sleep. The words are not dramatic, they are familiar, like the way someone today might murmur, "Please let me rest." Egyptians knew that the boundary between dreaming and waking was porous. To cross it without protection was to step into a field without armour. A small child shifts beside their mother. The mother reaches for a figure of Bees carved in clay. Bees is not handsome. He's squat, leonine, wild-haired, with his tongue stuck out like he's laughing. But this is the god of warding off what should not enter the bedroom, the god who stands guard while families sleep. He is joyful, loud, unruly, and because of that, no evil dares approach him. A fringe detail. Bees was also believed to frighten away scorpions. Yes, literal scorpions. The desert does not always sleep when you do, and sometimes the things that creep through the night are not spiritual at all. A god who protects both the soul and the toes is a very practical god. You hear the soft rattle of a small sistra being shaken once, a metal and reed instrument used in rituals. Not rhythmically, just once. A signal, a clearing of the space. The courtyard holds the sound for a moment, then releases it upward, like it is being absorbed by the stars. The Egyptians believed the night sky was the body of Nut, the great mother goddess, her limbs stretched across the world. To sleep under the sky was to sleep under her protection. But not everyone slept under open air. Some nights were too windy. Some seasons brought gnats. Some families simply preferred the feeling of enclosure. Inside the house, doorways were sometimes painted with protective symbols. Ankh for life, the Djed pillar for stability, the winged sun disk to guard transitions. So whether you slept inside or outside, sleep was always accompanied by symbols. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians truly believed amulets held inherent power, or if the power came from the belief of the wearer. Was the magic in the object, or in the mind, or in the community ritual surrounding it? The debate continues because belief systems are rarely simple. But what matters to you right now is how it feels to hold something small and meaningful in the dark. Your hand closes around the amulet. Your breath slows. The soft linen sheet rises and falls over your chest. Around you, the night deepens. A donkey brays once in the distance, then grows quiet. A dog pads across a nearby roof. Insects trill with a sound like the world breathing. The darkness no longer feels empty. It feels held, protected. You slide closer to the edge of sleep and something remarkable happens. Your mind does not resist it. The fears and burned nerves of the day do not cling to you. You have prepared. You have cooled the body. You have softened the skin. You have signalled to the spirit that rest is safe. You're not falling asleep. You're being carried into it. And as your consciousness loosens, this is what Egyptian sleep feels like. Not escape, but return. Return to the river. Return to the ancestors. Return to the body you have tended and honoured. Your last waking thought is a simple one. Not spoken, not verbal, just sensed. I am protected. And with that, sleep finally arrives, quiet, steady, warm like the desert's breath, cool like the river's memory. You sleep, but the night around you does not fall silent, because in Egypt, sleep is never the absence of sound. It is the weaving of sound into something gentle enough to rest inside. You begin to notice it as you drift between waking and dreaming. The way the world at night is full, not empty. The desert is not quiet, it is alive. And the city, no matter how small, never truly goes still. In the distance, a dog barks once, sharp and brief, like it has decided something is worth announcing, then loses interest. Donkeys let out their uneven, almost comedic brays from time to time, like background commentary on existence. Goats shift in their pens, their hooves scuffing against packed earth. Somewhere down the road, a late-night vendor calls softly, selling something simple like bread or figs, because not everyone sleeps at the same time. Not here, not ever. And under it all, always, is the Nile. You cannot see it from where you lie, but you can hear it. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a soft, continuous hush, like breath through linen. The rhythm is steady enough to calm the body without you thinking about it. Historical fact: the Nile's annual flooding regulated not only agriculture and planting schedules, but also daily life patterns, including sleep. The sound of the river was a constant presence for anyone who lived close enough to hear it, and even those inland often slept with the memory of the water, because the Nile was life. It was heartbeat. It was the reason Egypt existed at all. The insects contribute their own patterns to the night, a high, layered chorus that never quite pauses. Not shrill, not loud, just continuous, like the world humming to itself. The heat of the desert shifts the tone. Crickets sound different here, cicadas too. Their songs stretched out, slower, lower, shaped by the density of hot air. Someone beside you shifts on their mat. A small creak of palm fibre, a quiet sigh. Another body arranges itself to fit the breeze. Because remember, sleep here is not about silence. It is about movement. Air must move. Bodies must move. The night must move. And you too shift slightly, letting the breeze brush the back of your neck. The roof around you holds the warmth of the day still, but it is fading. Slowly, predictably, like a promise being released. Somewhere below, in the alley between homes, you hear footsteps. Not hurried, just someone walking. Maybe they are returning from work. Maybe they are going to relieve someone watching animals at night. Maybe they are simply restless. People lived close to one another here. Streets were narrow, homes touched, and sound moved through the gaps like smoke. Privacy was not silence. Privacy was understanding that not all sounds are invitations. People learned to hear without reacting, to ignore without absence, to exist together without needing to separate their lives into sealed compartments. A fringe detail. Some Egyptians kept small clay rattles or sistrum charms hanging near doors and windows, not as alarms, but as gentle sound markers. When the wind passed, the rattles chimed. When someone entered, they clicked, not to warn, to announce, softly. Everything at night here is soft. You hear a cow lowing somewhere far across the fields, her call carrying through air that finally cools enough to let sound stretch. You hear the faint rustle of palm fronds shifting, the leaves dry, stiff, brushing against each other like the pages of a book turned slowly. And above all of it is the muffled echo of the desert itself, a kind of vast open silence that is not empty, but full of space. The desert silence is not quiet, it is deep. It allows sounds to exist one at a time, with room to be themselves. Historians still argue whether Egyptians embraced night sounds with comfort, or whether they found them intrusive. Some texts suggest that families were used to constant background presence, that these sounds helped them feel connected and safe. Other evidence points to the use of protective spells spoken specifically to keep the night quiet in the heart, which may mean stillness was desired emotionally, even if external quiet was impossible. But as you lie here, listening, it becomes clear. Sleep in Egypt was not built on trying to create silence. It was built on accepting the world as it is. Animals do not hush for human rest. The river does not stop to make your dreams easier. The insects do not negotiate their song for convenience. And yet, you sleep anyway, because your mind is not fighting the world. It is moving with it. The sounds become background, rhythm, pattern, comfort. A child whimpers once and is soothed almost immediately by a soft shushing and a gentle hand. The sound fades into the night as easily as it arrived. You realize that sound here is not interruption. It is continuity. It means life is happening around you, not ending. It means the world is holding itself steady. It means you're not alone. Your breathing synchronizes with the world around you, slow, steady, patient. The breeze continues. The water jar sweats a little more coolness into the air. The linen beneath your fingers feels like moonlight woven into fabric. Your eyelids grow heavy again. The desert exhales, the Nile whispers, and you sleep. Not away from the noise, but inside it. You wake slowly, not because of alarm or urgency, but because the night has shifted. The soft breeze is thinner now, the warmth beginning to gather again at the edges of the air. But before you move, before you open your eyes fully, you notice something important. You're not alone. In ancient Egypt, sleep was not a solitary act. Families slept together, not just out of affection or tradition, but because the climate demanded it. Because heat moves differently when bodies gather. Because safety during the night was a shared responsibility, and because privacy was not defined the way it is now. You turn your head just slightly. Someone is curled to your left, a child, their small hand tucked beneath their cheek, hair loose from a day of sun and dust. To your right, perhaps an older sibling or a cousin, breathing slow and steady. This is normal, expected. Most families slept in clusters. A historical fact, domestic sleeping spaces in ancient Egypt were often multi-purpose rooms used for eating, sitting, weaving, and finally for laying out mats at night. There were rarely fixed bedrooms the way modern homes insist upon. Sleep was an activity the household entered together. It was seasonal, fluid, alive. In summer and warm seasons, families carried mats to the roof or courtyard to sleep in the open air. In winter, which was mild but still cool enough to encourage shelter, everyone moved inside to a lower room, closer to the heat stored in walls and enclosed air. The beds were rolled, carried, arranged, rearranged. You did not sleep where you slept because it was your designated room. You slept where the air spoke gently. You shift again, quietly, so as not to wake anyone. The child next to you murmurs in their sleep. Their dreams are safe. The amulets, the scent of oil, the soft linen, they are wrapped in the same protection you are wrapped in. You realize something subtle. Sleeping in a group means your body does not have to stay on guard. The nervous system recognizes others nearby. Safety multiplies, sleep deepens. It is harder in the modern world to imagine a life where privacy is not the highest social value. But here, privacy is not linked to walls, it is linked to intention. People speak softly when they mean something to be private. They speak openly when they want to be heard. Physical space does not dictate emotional space. A fringe detail, some households slept with livestock very close by. Not inside the same room necessarily, but sometimes just a thin wall away, because animals needed to be protected from theft or desert predators, and because the warmth of animals could help warm the house into cooler seasons. Imagine drifting to sleep to the steady breathing of goats as well as family. Life was layered, intertwined, interdependent, and yet even in this closeness, roles shaped sleeping arrangement. Infants and young children slept closest to mothers. Older children grouped together. Elders rested in positions that allowed ease of movement and quicker access to fresh air. The very placement of each sleeper reflected care. You feel the subtle rhythm of breathing around you, like the sea against a shore. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The night teaches you that rest is not an individual act but a shared one. You remember something you heard earlier, that Egyptians believed the sleeping soul travelled. If that is true, then perhaps it feels less dangerous to wander through the unseen when the bodies you love are close enough for your spirit to remember its way home. Historians still argue whether large families slept together out of affection or necessity, whether the closeness was emotional culture or climate adaptation. But to draw a line between those is to miss the truth. In Egypt, climate and culture were never separate. The desert shaped community, the Nile shaped rhythm, the sun shaped humility, and sleep shaped intimacy. You stretch your legs slightly beneath the linen. The others shift, but no one wakes. Sleep here is light enough to respond to movement, but deep enough to restore. You begin to notice how this closeness means everyone wakes together as well. Dawn does not arrive to one body at a time. It moves across the household like a tide rising. When the first person stirs, maybe the father preparing to check fields, maybe the mother rising to grind grain, maybe an older child tasked with feeding animals, the movement is gentle. No one is jolted awake. Wakefulness spreads. And for those who are not needed yet, they simply remain in the soft, warm cradle of early morning rest. Half waking, half dreaming, breathing the same air. The sleeping area slowly transitions into the living space, but not abruptly. Mats are rolled one by one, linen folded, pillows stacked, oils placed back into small jars. The courtyard shifts shape. What was night shelter becomes daytime hearth. The rhythm is constant transformation. Nothing is fixed. You look around the courtyard and realize something else. The family does not wake to solitude. They wake to presence, to voices, to skin, to shared breath. Love here is not spoken first, it is lived first, and somewhere deep in your chest, somewhere past language, you feel how natural that is. You think of modern bedrooms, doors closed, earbuds in, silence curated, walls separating bodies at rest, and it occurs to you that perhaps solitude is not the default state of human rest. Perhaps closeness is what we evolved in. Perhaps the body sleeps best when it knows it is part of a world that holds it. Now, the night is thinning, though the heat has not yet reclaimed the world. The stars are fading into pale sky. But before you stand, before you rise from your mat, you take one more slow breath. The child's hair brushes your shoulder. A hand rests lightly against your arm. The air is warm but gentle. Sleep is ending. But something tender remains. You are not alone in your rest. And because of that, your rest was whole. You leave the household now, stepping into a different part of Egypt entirely. Not the riverbank towns where farmers rise with the sun, but the desert village of Deir el-Medina, where the workers who carved and painted the tombs of pharaohs lived, worked, and slept under some of the harshest heat in the kingdom. The ground here is stone dry, the landscape bleached by the sun, the air sharper, thinner, harsher. There is no broad green ribbon of Nile fields to soften the horizon, only cliffs, sand, and the baked walls of workers' homes huddled tight together like cupped hands against the sun's glare. You walk along the narrow streets of the village, the stone under your feet still warm even though night has already claimed the sky. The people who live here are artisans, skilled and respected for their craft, entrusted with royal secrets and sacred imagery. Yet their lives are not luxurious. Their sleep is not a quiet retreat. It is what keeps them alive long enough to carve eternity for others. Historical fact. Deir el-Medina's workers lived on the west bank of the Nile near the Valley of the Kings, and their schedule was rigid. 8 days of intense labour, followed by 2 days of rest spent with their families. During work days, they slept in stone huts near the tomb sites, where the desert heat could be brutal even at night. You arrive at one of those huts now. The roof is low and flat, designed less for beauty and more for survival. Thick mud brick walls surround a single common room. There is no courtyard here, no open-air well for catching the breeze. These men slept close to the cliffs, where wind sometimes funneled through narrow passes, but the heat always returned. You duck inside. The air inside is warmer than outside, but calmer still. The walls hold the day's memory just as they did in the village homes you visited earlier, except here the warmth feels heavier, because the men's bodies were already exhausted before they even lay down to rest. You see mats laid across the floor, not fine woven ones like in the city, but rougher mats, made quickly, meant to be functional rather than comfortable. These workers didn't sleep for leisure. They slept because without sleep chisels would slip, paint lines would break, and hands would tremble in the sacred silence of the tomb passages. Sleep here was part of divine duty. If your hand faltered while painting the face of a god, your mistake would echo in eternity. A worker lies down beside you, his body slack with the kind of fatigue that comes from carving limestone in tight spaces filled with paint dust. He does not arrange his sheet carefully. He simply lowers himself, exhales, and lets sleep take him. And yet, even here, ritual persists. A small amulet rests near his head, likely a simple scarab carved from faience, its glaze cracked with time. Even the most exhausted soul does not sleep unguarded. The night air shifts slightly. Someone at the far end of the hut has dipped a cloth into cool water and laid it across their forehead. It is one of the simplest and most necessary cooling tricks in this place. Wet cloth plus breeze equals survival. A fringe detail. Sometimes workers at Deir el-Medina stored water in long-necked jars buried partially in the ground, where the earth stayed cooler. This helped them sleep with water that was not scorching warm, a small mercy in a furnace landscape. You lie on your mat and feel how different the air is here. No courtyard to draw in wind, no open sky to radiate heat upward. Only stone, stillness, and the collective breath of sleeping men. And yet, sleep still comes, because exhaustion is its own sedative. Your body sinks faster, deeper. There is no waiting for the perfect breeze, no adjusting for the ideal breath of night. The work here shapes sleep as much as the climate does. Historians still argue whether the workers of Deir el-Medina were privileged labourers with stable wages and state housing, or whether they were trapped by duty and isolation, living lives of exhausted service to gods and kings. The truth, like the cliffs around you, is layered, stratified by perspective. These workers were honoured, but they were also burdened. They were skilled, but they were also replaceable. They created eternal beauty, but they slept in heat that reminded them they were mortal. You shift your head slightly. Someone nearby snores softly. Another murmurs a dream. A third coughs the deep, dusty cough of someone who spends his days breathing powdered stone. Sleep here is not peaceful. It is necessary. It is the body folding itself carefully into a pocket of rest before another day of chiselling eternity. Outside the hut, the desert is enormous, silent except for the faint breath of wind dragging its fingers across sand. The cliffs loom, black shapes against the star-scattered sky. Somewhere beyond those cliffs lie the tombs the workers carved, passages of echoing darkness where kings hope to sleep forever in stillness. The irony is sharp. The men who built eternal rest sleep lightly, sweating, crowded, tired, but they sleep. Because tomorrow the work continues, and while the pharaohs dreamed of eternity, the workers dreamed of dawn. Cooler air, soft light, another day survived. You turn onto your side. The mat scratches your shoulder. The sheet is thin but real. The amulet rests near your fingers. The night holds you, not gently, but firmly. No comfort is wasted here. No breath taken for granted. And slowly, deeply, you fall asleep again. This time with the knowledge that rest is not luxury. It is endurance. You wake again, but this time in a different season, not the dry, breathless heat of midsummer, but the season of the Nile's flooding, when the air feels thicker, when the sky carries more moisture, when sleep takes on a different rhythm entirely. In ancient Egypt, the year was divided not by months, but by the moods of the river. Akhet, the flood, Pere, the growing, Shemu, the harvest, and each season changed how people lived, worked, and most importantly slept. Now you stand near the riverbank just as the floodwaters have risen high enough to swallow the fields in slow, gleaming sheets of reflective blue. The water stretches across land that only weeks ago was cracked and dry, turning the world into a mirror of sky. The air feels heavier now, not cool, not hot, but saturated, like it is holding its breath. You inhale and the air tastes of clay, reeds and distant rain from lands far to the south where the Nile begins its long journey. A historical fact. The flooding of the Nile was so reliable that it created one of the most stable agricultural calendars in the ancient world, timed closely with the heliacal rising of Sirius, the star Egyptians associated with the goddess Isis. When Sirius returned to the dawn sky, the flood would soon follow, and life would reshape itself accordingly. But for sleep, the flood meant something else entirely. It meant humidity, and humidity changes everything. Linen that once felt airy now clings slightly to the skin. The mats that once breathed freely now hold warmth longer. The coolness that once arrived at night now hesitates, moving slowly, caught in the thickness of the damp air. So families adapted. During Akhet, many people slept closer to the ground floor, where walls trapped night coolness better, rather than climbing to rooftops where humidity collected. Some slept in shaded lower rooms that had been deliberately built partially below courtyard level to create cooler air pockets. Others slept on platforms raised above the dampness of the river-soaked earth, but always with airflow in mind. The sleeping arrangement changed not because life became harder, but because life shifted, and Egyptians shifted with it. You find yourself inside a home now, where mats are rolled out across the inner room instead of the roof. The windows are open, and reed screens encourage whatever breath of air the night can offer. A shallow clay bowl of cool water sits beside each bedding place, not for drinking, but for dipping fingers, hands or face throughout the night. This was not luxury. This was endurance made gentle. Someone nearby fans themselves with a plaited palm fan, not quickly, but rhythmically, slow enough to move air without stirring heat. It is not frantic, it is measured. Egyptians did not rush their movements during hot, humid nights. Speed makes heat worse. Stillness invites calm. A fringe detail during flood season, some families scented their sleep mats and linens with crushed mint or basil to discourage insects drawn by the river's expansion. These herbs were not just kitchen flavours, they were protection, fragrance, and cooling agents in one. The scent now surrounds you. Fresh, green, softly sharp, rising with each breath you take. You lie down on your mat. The humidity is soft rather than oppressive, like a warm blanket the world has wrapped around itself. Sweat does not evaporate the same way now. It lingers, cooling the body slowly instead of quickly, so sleep becomes slower too. Not something that arrives at the first breeze, but something that eases into the body like a tide pulling back from shore. Historians still argue whether Egyptians adjusted their waking hours dramatically during a Ket, shifting sleep into the early morning when the air was coolest, or whether daily routines remained consistent and only nighttime comfort strategies changed. Some evidence suggests farmers rested more during midday heat in flood season, creating longer nights of wakefulness and longer afternoons of quiet sleep. Other evidence suggests routines stayed steady because the flood meant reduced field work and more time repairing tools, maintaining temples, and preparing for planting season ahead. The truth likely depended on region, wealth, and the nature of each year's flood. You close your eyes. The night is not quiet. The swollen river carries new sound. Frogs singing in chorus, insects buzzing in thick waves, the water itself shifting and slapping softly against irrigation walls and mooring posts. During the dry season, the world hummed. During the flood season, the world pulses. You turn your head toward the open window. The breeze is slow, but present. It touches your damp skin and cools you not quickly, but steadily, like patience made into air. Someone nearby whispers a short prayer to Happy, the spirit of the Nile's flood, thanking the river for returning, for feeding the land, for sustaining life. Their voice is quiet, as though speaking too loudly might disturb the delicate balance of water and sky. You feel something then. Not awe, exactly, but participation. Sleep here is not just physical, it is environmental, it is seasonal, it is relational. The river rises, the air thickens, the mats move indoors, the fans move slower, the prayers shift tone. Life does not resist. Life adjusts, and you adjust with it. Your breath deepens, your body grows heavier. The linen lies soft against your skin, clinging only slightly but not uncomfortably. The night does not cool quickly in flood season, but it cools eventually, and you are willing to wait, because waiting is part of rest. You feel sleep returning, not swift like a breeze, but deep like water. The Nile outside murmurs, patient and eternal, moving towards morning just as you do, and slowly, beautifully, you fall asleep again, held now not by wind, but by water. You wake in the hush before dawn, when the sky is still dark but no longer night, when the world is holding its breath between sleeping and rising, and in this half-light, you feel something subtle threading through everything around you, the way sleep and death existed as reflections of each other in ancient Egypt, how lying down at night was not just rest, but rehearsal, not just restoration, but a quiet return to the same symbolic posture the body would one day take in the tomb. You rise slowly, the mat leaving faint impressions on your skin, the linen sheet slipping away like a small tide receding. The others around you stir but do not wake. Their breathing continues like waves in the background. You step away from the sleeping space and into the courtyard or out onto the roof. The air is cool now, not sharp, not damp, just calm, like whatever weight the night carried has finally set itself down. And as you stand there, in that liminal moment, you can't help but remember that the Egyptians believed sleep was the temporary travelling of the soul. When you slept, your ba, the part of you with wings, the part of you that could move beyond the body, wandered through realms seen and unseen. Returning in the morning was a gift, not guaranteed, not assumed, but received. A historical fact rises quietly. Egyptians buried their dead in wooden or stone coffins shaped deliberately like beds, complete with carved legs, headrests, and even linen patterns drawn into stone. The coffin was not a box, it was a place to sleep forever. Death was not the opposite of sleep. Death was sleep extended, and so every night when you laid down upon your mat or your raised bed, or your linen-sheeted frame, you were echoing the eternal posture of the body at rest. This is why amulets mattered. This is why night prayers mattered. This is why breath was taken seriously. You walk to the edge of the roof and look out across the town, across the desert, across the river where morning is slowly blooming in pale blues and faded golds. The temples stand still as mountains, the columns rising like petrified forests, and you can almost hear morning hymns that will soon rise, offered to Ra, the returning sun, the resurrected god, the one who died each night in the underworld and rose each day reborn. The Egyptians did not just observe sunrise, they participated in it. To wake was to reenact cosmic resurrection. To sleep was to reenact cosmic descent. Life was not a line. It was a cycle. Sun to darkness to sun again, breath to dream to breathe again, body to death to eternity again. You place your hand on your chest, just as the priests once did, fingers spread lightly over the heart. The Egyptians believed the heart was not only the centre of emotion, but also the seat of memory, consciousness, identity. It would be weighed in the afterlife against the feather of Ma'at, the principle of truth, balance and rightness. And so, every night in sleep the heart rested, but it remembered. A fringe detail surfaces gently. The Egyptians sometimes painted or carved the goddess Ma'at directly onto headboards or coffin lids. Her feather stretched across the place where the sleeper's head would rest. Sleep was not just physical, it was moral. To sleep in balance was to live in balance. You breathe again, feeling the cool air expand your lungs slowly. And now you remember Bees, the laughing guardian, who kept nightmares away. You remember the eye of Horus watching over your spirit. You remember the lotus scent that calmed your mind. You remember the gentle hand that smoothed oil along your skin so your body would not crack under the sun's relentless fire. Every piece was part of a single understanding. The world of day and the world of night are connected by the breath of the sleeper. Historians still argue whether Egyptians fully believed their dreams were messages from gods, or whether some dreams were recognized as simple wanderings of the mind. But this debate misses something essential. Egyptians did not draw sharp lines between the sacred and the ordinary. The sacred was inside the ordinary. The divine was in the breeze. The eternal was in the way you lay down at night and rose again in the morning. You look again toward the tombs carved into distant cliffs, those dark voids cut into stone where pharaohs, queens and noble households prepared for their eternal rest. Their beds of gold, their stone sarcophagi carved like sleeping bodies, their burial chambers painted with scenes of night voyages and dawn return. They were not symbols of death alone. They were confirmations of what sleep already taught every night. The sun sets and the sun rises. The body lies down and the body rises. The spirit travels and the spirit returns. To sleep was to practice eternity. To wake was to enter life again with new breath. You find yourself closing your eyes again, not to sleep, but to feel the echo of that cycle inside your own body. The night has not ended. The day has not begun. This is the in-between space. The space the Egyptians treated as sacred. Maybe this is why sleep never frightened them. It was not unknown. It was familiar. It was a path they walked every evening, a threshold they crossed gently, supported by oil and linen, by amulets and song, by water jars that cooled the air and mats that let the body breathe. You open your eyes. The sky has shifted. Light is blooming over the river now. The birds begin their chorus. The village begins to stir. And you understand, perhaps more deeply than before, that sleep in ancient Egypt was not just a response to exhaustion. It was alignment with the sun, the river, the body, the spirit. And now, like Rhyme Self, you return. You return to the Nile one last time because every day in ancient Egypt begins and ends with the river. And sleep is always shaped by how close you are to its breath. The sky is soft now, washed in pale lavender and early gold, and the air carries that momentary coolness that appears just before sunrise, brief but precious, like a gift offered only to those who wake gently. You walk along the riverbank barefoot, the earth still damp from the night's settling dew, the smell of silt rich and familiar. A breeze comes off the water, light and slow, brushing your face like a memory. The homes behind you are stirring, murmurs of families gathering themselves back into motion, linen being folded, mats being rolled, children rubbing eyes heavy with the last threads of dreaming. But you're not rushing. Here, morning is not an alarm. It is a return. You watch the river shine beneath the rising light, and you remember how the Egyptians believed the Nile itself was a pathway between worlds, both a source of life and a reminder of eternity, flowing from south to north the way souls travel from life to the afterlife and back again. Sleep feels the same now, a journey out and a journey home. A historical fact. Egyptians believed that Ra, the sun god, died each night travelling through the Duat, the unseen realm, and rose again renewed each morning. And every person, no matter how humble, mirrored this cycle in their own sleep. When you slept, your spirit stepped beyond the body. When you woke, you returned. This is why morning was never taken for granted. You inhale deeply, feeling how the air has already begun to warm, how the day will soon unfold its heat layer by layer. But instead of bracing yourself, you understand now that the Egyptians did not fear the heat, because they knew how to rest inside its rhythm. They lived in time, not against it. They slept when the breeze allowed, they cooled their bodies with water and linen. They softened their skin with oil, they guarded their dreams with amulets and quiet ritual, and they woke with gratitude and readiness, not resistance. Someone nearby is grinding grain, the sound steady and familiar, stone on stone. A fisherman pushes a papyrus skiff into the water, the reeds parting around it. A group of women hangs freshly washed linen across a rope to dry, the fabric catching the morning light like soft banners. Life here is not hurried. Every motion is intentional. Every rhythm is inherited. A fringe detail lingers in your mind. Ancient texts describe the act of waking not as getting up, but as being restored. Waking was not the break in sleep. It was the completion of it. Your dreams have returned with you. Your breath feels fuller. Your body feels equal to the day because the night did not empty you. It replenished you. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians were unusually content, unusually resilient, or simply exceptionally practiced at accepting the world as it is. But you know now that acceptance was never passive. It was collaborative. They listened to the breeze, they watched the water. They understood that the body does not conquer nature. The body belongs to it. You look once more over the river, its surface silvering as the sun warms it. The day is beginning. Birds rise from the reeds, their wings scattering droplets into the light. You feel the memory of the night still on your skin. Oil, linen, cool water, gentle breath, shared warmth, distant stars. And you realize that the way the Egyptians slept was not just adaptation, it was intimacy, with land, with sky, with each other, with their own spirit. You step back toward the village, ready to return to life, to labour, to warmth. But you carry the night with you, the breeze, the stars, the soft exhale of the desert. You have learned not just how they slept, but why they slept the way they did. And now you understand the rhythm of this land. The day belongs to the sun, but the night belongs to you. And now, as we leave ancient Egypt behind, allow your breath to settle again, slow and steady, like the Nile moving in the dark. You don't need to think about anything just now. You've travelled a long way tonight, across heat and riverbanks, rooftops and courtyards, linen and starlight. You've seen how the body can rest even in a world of relentless sun, how sleep can become something gentle, shared, protective, sacred. Let the images soften now. Let the river fade into a glimmer. Let the rooftops dissolve into warm night air. Let the scent of lotus dissolve like a sigh. Your body is heavier now, in the safe way, like sand settling, like water becoming still. You're not holding yourself up. You're being held. The world around you is quiet. Not silent, not empty. Just quiet in the way that night becomes when it finally trusts you to rest. If your thoughts drift, let them drift slowly, like small boats on slow-moving water. If your breath deepens, let it deepen without effort. The day has already happened. The next day is not yet here. Right now, there is only this. Your chest rising, your chest falling, the soft rhythm that belongs only to you. Let the night gather around you the way linen gathers around sleeping skin. Gentle, weightless, familiar. You're safe to rest. You're safe to let go. You're safe to sleep. Good night.